for treatment abroad. These are some of the stories that the New Republic is reporting. Now to the front page of the Supreme newspaper. High Court imposes cost on Asiedu Nketia for omitting crucial witness in defamation case. There's also Gabriel Tanko Kwamiga sworn in as Council of State member, and Archbishop Boateng to release 100 inmates from the Nsawam prisons. Michael A. Dodu lacks capacity to sue on behalf of Dodu Clote family code rules. Blaze Investment begins construction of new AstroTurf for Kotoko, and NPA to deploy automated dispensers to implement the 24-hour economy. The story is on page 4 of the newspaper. Let me take you to some online portals and some of the stories that they are reporting. But this story is making rounds already this morning. The former Vice President, Dr. Bawumia, he has had some things to say to the President of the country, Mr. Mahama. Dr. Bawumia has criticized President Mahama's administration, and it is over recent developments in the country which he claims pose significant threats to the country's democracy. Now, this was contained in a statement released on February 19. I'm talking about yesterday. He addressed key issues, including mass dismissals of public workers, also attacks on journalists and the use of military force in civilian matters. So these are some of the things that Dr. Bawumia spoke about. Of course, the mass dismissal of public workers. So Dr. Bawumia accused Mr. Mahama of unfairly dismissing government employees who were legitimately employed under the previous administration of Nana Akufo-Addo. Well, according to him, these dismissals contradict Mr. Mahama's campaign promise of creating jobs for all Ghanaians. He further noted that directors, security personnel, nurses, and teachers have all been affected by these terminations. One of the things that Dr. Bawumia had to say to Mr. Mahama. The next thing amongst the highlights of Dr. Bawumia's statement to Mr. Mahama was targeting non-political public servants. The former vice president, he also highlighted many of the dismissed individuals were public servants rather than political appointees, criticizing the government for targeting professionals simply because they were appointed during the previous administration. He also raised concerns about increasing insecurity and attacks. Dr. Bawumia was concerned over the growing insecurity in the country, pointing to reports of attacks on journalists and state institutions. This is a subject to be delving deeper in the show today, so you may want to stay with us. Plus, Ghana experiencing a military takeover. Dr. Bawumia compared the current political climate to a military coup rather than a peaceful democratic transition. I'll quote what he said. He said, "This is a rather transmission of a military takeover, not a peaceful democratic transition." He emphasized he urged President Mahama to take action to restore law and order. And this is related to some pockets of violence we've reported on since the December 7 elections, and of course the swearing in of Mr. Mahama on January 7. He also called for democratic integrity and governance. So these are some of the highlights of Dr. Bawumia's statement to Mr. Mahama. This is something we'll be delving deeper into the show this morning with Sixtus Ullo and Johnny Hughes, of course. Some of the stories also making rounds on some online portals. Murtala Mohammed urges journalists to support the fight against galamsey. This is something that we here at Media General at 3FM 92.7 and all the Media General platforms we've been championing for a very, very long time. Custom officers opened fire in and custom vehicle engineer injured by stray bullets, and active involvement of politicians hindering fight coming from the Environment Minister, Murtala Mohammed. Passport office to work day, night and dawn shifts. That's coming from the new Foreign Affairs Minister, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa. And this will come as some good information to a lot of people who have had cause to complain over the delays in acquiring a passport. Of course, this is part of government's 24-hour economy initiative. 70% of Accra street light to be fixed in 50 days. That's from the regional minister. He says that Accra will be lit up again in 50 days. We'll see how far that goes. We'll be keeping an eye and bringing you some more updates in our subsequent discussions and subsequent bulletins. Talking about oral, no running away. Akufo-Addo urges ex-appointees to face accountability. And that is attributed to the former president, but that is said by the NPP Director of Communications. He revealed that President Akufo-Addo has directed his former appointees to remain available for any accountability processes following the conclusion of his administration. He stressed the NPP's commitment to transparency and accountability. We, the NPP, have no record of running away. We'll be here, he stated firmly. So that's from the communications director of the NPP, Richard Ahiagbade. All these subjects will be delving deeper into them in the course of the NSEA Kumi, the Member of Parliament for Akwetia, since the case began. But the NPP is saying that NSEA Kumi is being untreated unfairly. In fact, for the minority, they are not happy about the High Court's decision to convict the Member of Parliament for Akwetia, NSEA Kumi. We know that he had an injunction placed on him, barring him from being sworn in as an MP. However, he proceeded to Parliament on January 7, and then he took his oath. In response, the court convicted him. Well, addressing journalists in Parliament on Wednesday, I'm talking about yesterday, the minority leader, Alexander Payne-Makin, described the court's decision as unfair and assured that the caucus would take the necessary legal steps to support their colleague. He added that the minority will come out fully with their position when they receive a full briefing from their lawyers. Well, let's take a listen to the Clerk of Parliament, Mr. Ahumajatro, on January 7, when the matter of the Akwetia Member of Parliament came up. Of course, that was before he was sworn in as Member of Parliament. Take a listen.
In the case of Akwetia, the Clerk to Parliament was served a process on the 3rd of January 2025 with an order of interim injunction from a High Court in Koforidua. This order was served through the legal office of the Parliamentary Service. The order directed the respondents, including the Clerk to Parliament, indicating that they are restrained from proceeding to call, admit, register, swear in, recognize, gazette the said NSEA Kumi as the elected member for the Akwetia constituency. At the time of the receipt of the order, the Parliamentary Service had already completed the process of registration of NSEA Kumi as member-elect. Honorable members, so I have brought this matter to the attention of the House. That is my pleasant duty to do. The member may decide, may elect to participate, but in doing so, I'm drawing attention to Article 105 of the Constitution, and I will read, a person who sits or votes in Parliament knowing or having reasonable grounds for knowing that he is not entitled to do so commits an offense and shall be liable on conviction to such penalty as shall be prescribed by or under an enactment of Parliament. Having done this, I have discharged my noble duty. I'll end there.
Mr. Chairman, the member so desires to proceed to be sworn in and to also participate in the election of the Speaker and bear the consequences himself.
We are here to procure the court ruling and the orders of the court. The lawyers are going to brief the caucus, and we will come out with our position on the matter. Meanwhile, I'm sure all necessary steps will be taken to ensure that our colleague is law-abiding and ensure that the right thing is done. But we have to say that we are dissatisfied with the approach, and we think that he has been treated unfairly. We would come out fully with our position when we receive full briefing. We are here to procure the court ruling and the orders of the court. The lawyers are going to brief the caucus and
Annan Sixtus Ullo, the man from Ullo. That's where you come from. Eh? I don't come from Ullo. You come from Ullo.
Crosby, how are you?
I'm well, Sixtus.
Are you okay?
I'm very fine.
Are you sure?
I am very fine.
You slept well?
It is you that I should ask, are you okay?
You slept well?
Yes, I slept. Did you come with somebody today?
I always come with people. I've explained this over and over and
you came
over.
with somebody?
Yes, with somebody.
I went to your car spoil. The man, after picking somebody yesterday, his car spoiled. The car is not working again. Next time, you'll be picking boots and loads. How are you, my brother? How's your morning looking like?
Fine. God is good.
God is good all the time.
We have life.
And we have everything. Oh,
Yes. Yes. Through it all.
Yeah. The man
He's
is not
faithful.
happy. He's not happy this one. Charlie, clocks up people. They are striking today, Sixtus.
You know, I said, is that the case? So
They say that
think
the appointment is a political one.
Yes. So what effect does it have on productivity? I am openly comparing the Electoral Commission to the births and deaths registry in terms of sensitivity. You say that both are sensitive organizations, and I'm very you see, I'm picking my words carefully so that I don't.
This appointment,
I'm not misunderstood.
This appointment that they are not happy about, Mr. Butchie. So he's a former DC and as an activist of the NDC. They say that he cannot come there because he may do politics with the office that he finds himself in.
And
so
I'm
that is the
asking,
impact.
What is the politics? That what? He would deny NPP members birth certificates and give more birth certificates to NDC members. And I am failing to understand. Or not failing. I am unable to understand. So unless Clocksack is able to explain clearly
the impact his presence would have,
his partisanship.
Right.
I'm taking for granted. I'm admitting that the man is partisan. So what is the impact of that partisanship on the office that he is going to hold? And I compare it again to the Electoral Commission. A known patron of the MPP appointed to the Electoral Commission. Every other individual in this country said, no, Mr. President, this one day you got it wrong. To the extent that people called on the said individual to voluntarily resign. CSO even got into that matter. I don't know if you recall that. CSOs came together to speak against that appointment.
Right.
Clocksack was quiet.
All
other labor unions were quiet. DJA was quiet. GBA was quiet. GMA was quiet. NRGM was quiet. Every other labor union was quiet. So now, again, I asked, what is the impact of Mr. Butchie's partisanship on the office that he's going to
amongst the reasons they are giving, too, is that their members have been dismissed before for veering into politics. So why should politicians with impunity come into the civil service and think it should be normal? If you're coming to the table, if you are pleading for equity, you should come with clean hands.
Do you know that members of parliament, former members of parliament have been appointed to the bench before?
True.
Some members of parliament have been appointed to the bench. Can we say that because there were known faces of one party or the other, they got onto the bench and all their judgments and rulings and decisions all tilted in favor of the party that they once represented in parliament? Can we say that? I mean, I really admire the principle, the stance, but I'm saying that there must be a principle behind the stance.
Yeah, that is what I just said, that they have had members dismissed because they were seen as being partisan. So we're asking for the same thing.
They were seen as being partisan?
Yes.
Should I repeat the example, the EC example?
Well, they are talking for themselves.
Should they talk for themselves alone? Is it not a country we are running?
They are talking for the people in the association.
Crosby.
Let's speak with our Labour Affairs correspondent, Daniel Opoku. This is a subject he's been following since it began. Daniel, good to have you join us this morning. Talk to us about how this whole conversation, where it began from and where it has gotten to, Daniel.
Right, so good morning to you. I think we recall about 2 weeks ago, the leadership of Cluster had their National Executive Council meeting at the ministry, where they decided that a man who has been appointed by the president to head the birth and death registry, even though he's qualified, but he's a politically exposed person. For that reason, there is a need for the president to remove him from office. So the leadership met the staff over there and engaged them. And subsequently, they went ahead to meet the president. Now, right after the encounter with the president, the man was appointed and currently still working. And that's really, really under Cluster. So last week, they also met the presidency again, where they got a full assurance and a commitment that the man was going to be removed. To the extent that the man was even supposed to be reassigned. That's Mr. Samuel Adonbutu. But unfortunately, he was not assigned, and Cluster has to reactivate the strike that they had intended to go last week. The reason they're on strike this morning as I speak to you. So that's how it all began. They believe that Mr. Adonbutu should not be the head of birth and death registry because he's politically exposed person, and he was one time the DC under the Milford regime. For that reason, he should not be the head. A civil servant should be appointed to head a particular institution. The reason Cluster had decided to go on strike this morning.
Daniel, we're talking about, Sixtus particularly is concerned about what the presence of this politically exposed person, what impact it is likely to have on the work of CLOCSAG, hence the call for a strike.
Right, so when we look at exactly what CLOCSAG is saying, CLOCSAG is not questioning the competences of the man who has been appointed.
True.
But it's basically raising issues about him being a politically exposed person. This is simply because in 2017, when CLOCSAG went to court, they had gone to court to seek the interpretation of the Supreme Court, Article 195 of the Constitution, which are asking or pleading with the court for the court to grant them that leave so that the armed members will be able to engage in partisan politics. But unfortunately, the Supreme Court put a limitation on that. So the Supreme Court did not allow that particular incident to go through. So according to the ruling of the Supreme Court, if you're a civil servant, you must remain as such. In case you want to engage in open partisan politics, what they call the overt partisan politics, then clearly you may have to step aside and engage in partisan politics. But in the case of Samuel Adonbutu, he was seen by members of CLOCSAG that he openly campaigned for His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, even though he's still an NDC member. So the argument of CLOCSAG is that we are not questioning his competence, but once he stood on a political platform to campaign in favor of a political party, then obviously he cannot be the head of the best and best registry. So if they believe them, then that compromises that particular institution being an independent institution, also being the institution of a civil service. It's the reason that asking the president to move him from office.
Daniel, we would have loved to talk more with you, but your line is a little bit unclear, a little bit noisy. But we'll get back to you when it is better for more on this conversation. Sixtus, you have your answers, or you're still or you're still not satisfied.
No, I'm really because okay. So you you heard Daniel referencing Supreme Court decision.
Yes, we'll put the Supreme Court decision on our socials shortly. The Supreme Court decision that is, if you like, motivating or as a principle, a basis why CLOCSAG is taking this decision now. So it begins like this. It is therefore our view that the codes of conduct of the Civil and Local Government Service in general do not deny civil and local government servants the freedom of association, particularly the right to join political parties of their choice. Let's move on. They merely seek to place a limitation on the manifestation of that right while in service in order to maintain the, listen to this, neutrality of the civil and local government service and foster the principles of, pronounce that for me, how do they pronounce?
Anonymity.
Okay, and permanence. What they say in some is, if you wish to broadcast or otherwise manifest your political party allegiance and or run political office, step away from the said services. This is the basis of their demand.
So, Mr. Kweku Boche, it's Kweku, right? Mr. Boche, when he's here to take office.
Right, okay.
So we cannot say that there's a manifestation of his political activism in office.
We should wait.
We cannot wait.
We should wait for him to do it before we ask that he be removed.
You are questioning a man's neutrality in a matter when the man has even yet to step foot in that office.
The man's neutrality,
I just cited
the question is based on where the man has come from.
I just cited the example of former MPs who had been appointed in the past, appointed to the bench. And I asked the question of whether... You spoke about the Electoral Commission appointments. I spoke about the Electoral Commission. But let me go back to the former MPs who had been appointed to the bench. Can we say that in the exercise of their duties and obligations on the bench, they were always seen, or they were seen to be wholly and fully in favor, or taking decisions that favor the parties on which they went into parliament?
Right.
We cannot outrightly say that. So the point I'm making is that, yes, number one, there is a principle we must all uphold. But as labor unions, as professional groupings and bodies, we should not wait, pick and choose what to speak up against and what to be quiet about.
Okay. We should be principled. If our position is A, we are maintaining position A throughout.
And I gave you the two examples of Galamsey just last year. And CLOCSAG was part of that organized labor when they went to see President Akufo-Addo at the time. In
fact, for that Galamsey conversation, it was only UTAG who, if you like, stood on their grounds for a little while. Even though they had to renege at a point.
And the students are now suffering it because that changed the academic calendar.
It did.
So it's not. Let's be fair to principle. Let's agree that this is not in the best interest of the nation. So let us not do it. Whether it is Party A that is in office or Party B that is in office, whether it directly affects the particular labor union or not, whether it should be a matter of principle. We are building a nation. So if there's a decision that says that maintain your neutrality, of course everybody is expected to maintain neutrality. And if you are talking about neutrality, which body more than the Electoral Commission should we be interested in its neutrality and independence? Which other body?
Sixtus, hold on for me. Let's listen to Isaac Bampo Addo, CLOCSAG's executive secretary, when the strike was declared, and if you like, the reasons he gave for the strike. After that, we'll have a conversation with a labor consultant. Then those of you listening, those of you watching us on social media, we'll get to you so that you say your mind.
Supreme Court, it says step away. This is Supreme Court. It says step away from these services. If you wish to broadcast, we all know that Mr. Botri is an NDC activist. He chose to broadcast it. He was a former DC of the Mills administration. He chose to broadcast it. They said, if you wish to broadcast or otherwise manifest your political allegiance or run political office, step away from the services. This is Supreme Court talking. It's not CLOCSAG speaking or Isaac Bampo Addo speaking. This is the Supreme Court. Now, our members have been dismissed for flouting this law. We are not saying the president hasn't got a right to appoint. The Supreme Court is saying anybody with political color should step away from the services. We are not saying it. This is a Supreme Court ruling. Unless you are not saying Supreme Court ruling are not law. We're going to get to them with what the Supreme Court is saying. And if they say we should throw it out, but this is what the Supreme Court is saying. So it's for the public to judge whether we should abide by what the Supreme Court is saying or we should throw it out. The strike was called by the National Executive Council, so they are the ones that can call it off. This is the Supreme Court thing. It says,
and in fact, when it comes to the appointment of a registrar, who essentially is the head of that department, Section 2 of Act 1027 makes it clear how it ought to be done. The contention of CLOSAG is that the registrar position is a civil service position. That has to be backed by a specific provision in law. Now, if you read the relevant section of this law, Section 2, which deals with the appointment of the registrar of births and deaths, Section 2.1 says, the registry shall have a registrar of births and deaths. Section 2.2 says, the president shall, in accordance with Article 195 of the Constitution, appoint the registrar. Now, you may seek to inquire what Article 195 says. Article 195 simply gives the president power to make appointments, and in some instances allows him to delegate that power to other entities, individuals, or organizations to do. And in the specific instance of the births and deaths registry, the law governing the operations of that, the law governing the operations of that entity spells out clearly who should make the appointment. It says the president, and the president has acted in accordance with the 1992 Constitution. Now, Section 2.3 says the president shall, in appointing a person as the registrar, have regard to the relevant academic qualification, experience, and knowledge of that person in civil registration. The registrar shall hold office on the terms and conditions specified in the letter of appointment. So, the criteria for that appointment is clearly spelled out in Section 2 of this Act. CLOSAG has not questioned the competence of the current occupant of the position of registrar. They only say that he is politically exposed. But I have just read the law to you, and you, as journalists, I'm sure, have capacity to dig up this law and read it for yourself. There is no way that it is said that the position ought to be occupied by a civil servant. And Mr. Adumbotre is a highly experienced official who in the past has served as district chief executive under the Mills administration. And he has many years of public service experience. And he has requisite academic qualifications to hold that particular position. So it is the view of government that whilst we respect our partners in organized labor and seek to dialogue on all relevant matters, in this particular instance, the president has acted in accordance with Ghanaian law. And for that reason, there cannot be a reason why Mr. Adumbotre should be removed, only because he is not a civil servant. There is no provision that says that the position is reserved for civil servants. If it is the view of CLOSAG that in the past civil servants have occupied it, it does not mean that any other person, apart from a civil servant, cannot occupy that position. And we need to act strictly in accordance with Ghanaian law, even as we continue to engage and dialogue on how we govern our country. We are aware of similar agitations in the past against the appointee of President Akufo-Addo. And we do know that a court case emanated from that particular engagement. As we speak, I'm not aware that the court has determined the matter. So until this law is revoked or there is judicial pronouncement that says that this particular law is illegal and should be struck down, we believe that the president has acted correctly. And in fact, when it comes to the appointment...
So those were the voices of, the first was Isaac Bampoado, Executive Secretary of CLOSAG, and then Felix Kwachiofosu speaking on behalf of the government. Sixtus, we have on the lines Seth Abloso. He's a labor consultant. He's listened to the various positions of these individuals, and from the perspective of Labour, where does he stand? What does he make of this whole back and forth appointment, revocation of appointment, civil servant, politically exposed, former DCE, capacity? Seth, talk to us. You've listened to the conversations. Where are we heading towards?
Good morning.
Good morning, Senior.
I wish I could advise as a Bamfuado in private, but now everything has spilled out in public. But the position they've taken is completely wrong. It's completely wrong. You know, no union can just get up and declare a strike. You are under obligation under Act 651, the Labour Act, to notify your employer as well as the National Labour Commission in writing of any intention to declare a strike and the reasons for that decision. As at the close of day yesterday, my check was that no such indication has been given to the National Labour Commission. And to say that it's a decision of the National Executive Council doesn't make it valid. But when Bampo says so, it does appear that he's taking himself outside the National Executive Council. But the National Executive Council, at any point in time, in any organization, needs to be led. They need to be led to take the right decisions. But this thing they've done, it cannot stand. He's been referring to ruling of the courts.
Exactly.
Yes. So what you do in the situation where you are not satisfied with this is to seek legal opinion quietly. Then when you are convinced about the need to go to court, you go to court. But you don't declare a strike before you seek redress. It's completely out of order. Completely out of order.
Seth,
you see, practitioners in labor and industrial relations refer to this Labor Act, the Operative Labor Act, as legislation of enlightened compromise. There were a lot of compromises among the three arms of government to get this act prepared. So when it went to Parliament literally had no work to do. It just had to pass it. So labor unions in particular had the obligation to respect the provisions of the law in much the same way as an employer cannot lock out workers while there is a dispute that has not been tabled before the National Labour Commission.
Seth, right now we are, if you like, at a breaking point. Their strike is beginning today. Government's position has not changed. What do we do?
If Isaac Bampo and any of the members of the leadership is or are hearing us, they need to call off the strike and go back to the drawing board. And tactically, you don't say a National Executive Council has taken a decision. It's important that whatever decision you take, you get a small membership, a committee to deal with matters arising out of your decision. Because it's not at all times that it's expedient to summon the whole National Executive Council to take a decision on a matter, especially when the matter is this bad.
Seth, I have also in the studios Sixtus Ullo. Now, at the moment, about 70,000, over 70,000 of workers will be part of the strike, and we know that the impact the strike is likely to have. But back to the demand.
Some of them.
I see. Back to the demands of CLOCSAG that this man be removed because of the concerns they have. If that is not listened to, what precedent is it setting for future appointments into areas in relation to the public and civil service?
Oh, the situation it presents is that it puts CLOCSAG in very bad light. And going forward, I don't expect that we'll have such a situation again. I'm saying that as at the close of the day yesterday, they hadn't notified the National Labour Commission of any intention to go on strike and the reasons for embarking on sale. So it's regrettably ill-advised and out of order. And the earlier they backtrack, the better. Because they cannot have majority of the membership backing this. No.
If this demand, or where they are coming from, the idea behind the strike, if it is not carefully taken into notice, wouldn't we in subsequent administrations in the years to come now be open to appointing extremely politically exposed persons to certain places that would, affect the proper delivery of their work? I'm asking about the precedent this decision is likely to have.
No, you see, one of the reasons they have mentioned is that this gentleman was appointed a DCE, District Chief Executive, for instance, in during Professor Mills' administration. Being appointed a District Chief Executive does not necessarily mean that one belongs to the same political party as the appointing authority, the person making the appointment. And we know by law that district assemblies are non-partisan. So you can't fault a district chief executive.
Seth, thank you. Thank you so much for your time with us. We're grateful for speaking with us. Seth Abloso is a labor consultant engaging with us on what he makes of the position of CLOCSAG. Sisters, you know who sang the song?
Which one?
The one playing. The one
sang it?
Yes, whose song it is? I won't tell you. Well, you get me asking me who song it is. You don't know that. You don't know.
Who sang it?
How about Fresh? I should tell you his name, man. I know the name. His name is Kwame A+.
I put it to you.
That song is an A+ song. The MP. Well, his days as a musician. let's take some of the comments to the discussion on our social media platform. So this is from Dan Ember. If the Supreme Court has ruled on something and the president has wrong against the court, let the court side the president with contempt. Are they fighting for the Supreme Courts? That's a question that Dan Ember is asking. A question that Clement Amalo is also asking is that if this strike is deeply unpopular amongst members, as we're led to believe, then it only confirms what I've thought when this came up. It's an ego trip. When the leadership of CLOCSAG went missing on the Galamsey strike. Sixtus, buttressing your comment, he says the leadership of CLOCSAG went silent on the Galamsey strike. Alongside other unions, it only exposed who they were, not working in the interest of the worker. Safaskuma says, what is the argument of CLOCSAG that the appointed officer will influence the registration of newly born? Will he influence the registration of newly born and the dead? Clement Amalo, in the Civil Service Act or law, does birth and death registry fall under the civil service? Sixtus, you want to answer that?
What was the question?
In the Civil Service Act or law, does birth and death registry fall under the civil service?
We can easily check. The Constitution has defined all of those things.
Right.
What constitutes the civil service and what constitutes the public service. It's something we can easily just check.
Desmond Kweku Ejabeng, I think what needs to be determined is whether Kweku Botre is a civil servant and he openly campaigned for the NDC. When people were drinking Sina, they were quiet, and this is where they draw their line. Major in minors and minor in the major. Could they have asked this if it was Adudi? Oh, Ishizulu, mind your language, okay? The leadership of CLOCSAG must be very something. Put your language well. Funny how they suddenly have a voice. JDM, the Liberator. This one says, why the president shall appoint an army commander? Why don't they appoint a politician, an IGP of the police and immigration service? The universities and accountant general is not from within the appointment of all. So these are some of the comments that are coming through. But let's hear from you. Call us now, 0559-242-717, 0556-910-154. We'd like to hear from you on what you make of the conversation that we're having. We have a first caller. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.